Imagine standing at the edge of a vast and stormy ocean while the wind howls against your skin. You feel the raw power of the elements, and you realize how small you are in the face of such immense forces. This is the sensation of being alive in a world that is constantly shifting and changing beneath your feet. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to build walls to keep this ocean out. We chase careers and status and relationships in the hope that if we just secure enough, we will finally be safe. But deep down in the quiet moments before sleep, we know the truth. We know that everything we hold is fragile and temporary. 2,500 years ago, a man named Siddhartha Gautama decided to stop building walls and start looking at the water. He sat beneath a tree and made a radical choice to face the human condition without flinching. He discovered that the path to true strength is not found in avoiding pain, but in understanding the nature of suffering itself. By looking directly at the discomfort we run from, we unlock a wisdom that can weather any storm. The journey begins with the most challenging realization of all. This is the first noble truth, which states that life contains inevitable suffering. However, this is not a statement of pessimism or despair. It is a courageous act of looking at reality exactly as it is, without the filters of our hopes and fears. The Buddha used the word dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, but means something much deeper and more subtle. It refers to a wheel that is off-center or a bone that has slipped out of its socket. It is the gnawing sense of dissatisfaction that permeates even our happiest moments. Think about the last time you achieved a major goal that you had worked toward for years. You felt a rush of joy and a sense of completion that was intoxicating. But how long did that feeling actually last before the mind started looking for the next thing? How long before the satisfaction faded and the familiar itch of wanting more returned? This is the essence of dukkha. It is the realization that no external condition can ever provide permanent and lasting peace. Siddhartha began his life as a prince, surrounded by every luxury imaginable. His father tried to protect him from the harsh realities of the world by keeping him enclosed within high palace walls. He had wealth and beauty and power at his fingertips, yet he felt a hollowness that no amount of pleasure could fill. He understood that living in a bubble of ignorance was a form of spiritual imprisonment. When he finally ventured outside the palace gates, he saw the inevitable fate of all living beings. He saw an old man trembling with age and realized that youth is a fleeting dream. He saw a sick person writhing in pain and realized that health is a temporary privilege. He saw a corpse being carried to the funeral pyre and realized that life is a brief spark in the dark. These sights did not break him, but they woke him up. He realized that building a life solely on the pursuit of pleasure is like building a sandcastle right at the tide line. The waves will always come and wash it away. Most people in the modern world try to numb this realization with endless entertainment and distraction. We scroll through screens and buy things we do not need just to avoid the silence where the truth lives. But the Buddha teaches us that there is dignity in facing the truth. Acknowledging suffering is the first step toward true freedom because it stops the exhausting cycle of denial. When you accept that life is difficult and that loss is part of the deal, you stop fighting against the nature of reality. You stop taking your pain personally, as if the universe has singled you out for punishment. You begin to see that your struggle is the struggle of every human being who has ever lived. This shared experience becomes the foundation of compassion. It allows you to look at a stranger and know that they too carry a heavy burden. The first truth is not meant to depress you, but to ground you in what is real. It clears away the fog of delusion so that the actual work of liberation can begin. By staring into the darkness, you begin to see the possibility of light. You understand that if suffering has a cause, then it must also have a cure. This is the beginning of the path to unshakable inner strength. Once we accept that dissatisfaction is part of the human experience, we must ask why this is the case. This brings us to the analytical phase of the Buddha's teaching, where we diagnose the root cause of our distress. The Buddha acted like a skilled physician who does not just look at the symptoms, but investigates the underlying disease. he discovered that the engine driving our suffering is a specific kind of mental thirst. This thirst is called tanha, which translates to craving or desire, but it is important to distinguish this from simple needs like hunger or the desire to be kind. Tanha is the neurotic and demanding insistence that reality be different than it is. It is the voice in your head that screams that this moment is not enough. It is the fantasy that if you were just in a different place, or with a different person, or had a different body, you would be happy. This craving manifests in three distinct ways that pull us apart. First, there is the craving for sensual pleasure and the gratification of the senses. We are addicted to the highs of taste and touch and validation. We treat life like a vending machine that is supposed to dispense happiness on demand. When the machine jams or gives us something we did not order, we react with anger and frustration. Second, there is the craving for becoming. This is the obsession with status and identity and legacy. We want to be someone important, someone who is remembered and admired by the crowd. We build elaborate costumes for our egos and spend all our energy defending these fragile identities. In the United States, this form of craving is often celebrated as ambition, but it can easily turn into a prison. We become slaves to the image we have created, terrified of making a mistake or looking foolish. Third, there is the craving for non-existence or avoidance. This is the desire to check out when things get too hard or too painful. It is the impulse to sleep all day or numb ourselves with substances, or simply withdraw from the world. It is the rejection of the present moment because it feels too heavy to bear. The Buddha taught that this thirst is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are. We cling to things because we believe they will give us solidity. We cling to our opinions and our possessions and our relationships as if they are life rafts in the ocean. But the harder we cling, the more we suffer. Imagine holding a rope that is being pulled by a runaway horse. The rope burns your hands and drags you through the dirt. The pain is intense, and you scream for it to stop. The Buddha simply asks, why do you not let go of the rope? We do not let go because we are afraid of what will happen if we do. We are afraid of the unknown and the emptiness that lies beyond our gripping. We believe that we are the ones controlling the horse. This is the great illusion of control that causes us so much anxiety. We spend our energy trying to manipulate the external world to match our internal map. But the map is not the territory. The world follows its own laws of cause and effect, completely indifferent to our demands. When we analyze our suffering, we see that it arises in the gap between what we want and what is happening. The wider the gap, the greater the pain. If it is raining and you demand sunshine, you will suffer. If it is raining and you accept the rain, you may get wet, but you will not suffer mentally. This analysis requires a sharp and piercing honesty. You have to watch your own mind like a hawk. You have to catch yourself in the act of demanding the impossible. You have to see how you create your own misery by arguing with reality. It is a process of deconstructing the ego and seeing the gears of attachment turning. When you see the mechanism clearly, the spell begins to break. You realize that you have been holding the key to your own cage the entire time. It is easy to misunderstand this teaching as a call to become a stone. People often hear about the end of craving and assume it means the end of passion or love or ambition. They fear that becoming free from attachment means becoming indifferent to the world. This is perhaps the greatest barrier for the Western mind, which values drive and emotions so highly. But the Buddha was not teaching nihilism or the suppression of life. He was teaching the art of non-attachment, which is radically different from detachment. Detachment is a form of coldness and a way of closing your heart to protect it from breaking. Non-attachment is the ability to love fully and deeply, without demanding that the object of your love never changes. Think of holding a beautiful bird in your open hand. If you close your fist tight to keep the bird, you crush it and destroy the very life you wanted to hold. If you open your hand completely, the bird rests there by choice, and you can appreciate its beauty without possession. The third noble truth teaches that the cessation of suffering is possible. This cessation is often called nirvana, which literally means to blow out or to cool down. It is the cooling of the fires of greed and hatred and delusion. Imagine living your life without the constant heat of anxiety burning in your chest. Imagine navigating a crisis at work or a conflict in your family without being hijacked by your own reactions. This is the counterpoint to the chaotic world we live in. It is a state of profound stability that allows you to engage with the world more effectively, not less. When you are no longer obsessed with how the world affects you, you are finally free to help the world. You can act with clarity because your vision is not clouded by fear or selfish desire. A surgeon is most effective when they care about the patient but remain steady and focused on the procedure. If the surgeon is shaking with weeping emotion, they cannot hold the scalpel steady. In the same way, the path of the Buddha cultivates a cool head and a warm heart. It allows you to experience joy without clinging to it, knowing that it will pass like a summer breeze. It allows you to experience sadness without drowning in it, knowing that it too is just a passing weather pattern. You begin to treat your emotions like guests who visit your house. You welcome them in and treat them with respect, but you do not let them take over the furniture or claim ownership of the house. You remain the master of your own home. This shift in perspective transforms your relationship with time. Most of our suffering comes from regretting the past or worrying about the future. The counterpoint to this time-traveling anxiety is the realization that life only happens now. When you stop craving for the next moment to arrive, you can finally inhabit this one. You notice the texture of the air and the taste of your food and the face of the person across from you. You stop rushing through your life in a desperate attempt to get somewhere else. You realize that there is nowhere else to get to. The peace you are looking for is not waiting for you at the finish line. It is available right here in the middle of the race. It is found in the space between your thoughts and the pause between your breaths. By letting go of the demand for perfection, you find a perfection that was already there. You find that you do not need to add anything to yourself to be complete. You simply need to drop the heavy burdens you have been carrying for so long. Now we arrive at the realization of how to walk this path in our daily lives. The Buddha did not just offer philosophy. He offered a practical training regimen for the mind. This is the fourth noble truth which outlines the path leading to the cessation of suffering. It is often called the Eightfold Path, but we can understand it through three essential pillars. These pillars are wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Wisdom is the commitment to seeing things as they really are, not as we want them to be. It is the constant practice of checking our assumptions and questioning our own narratives. When you feel anger rising, wisdom asks, "What am I defending right now?" It recognizes that anger is usually a bodyguard for a wounded ego. Ethical conduct is the foundation that keeps the mind calm and free from remorse. It is impossible to find inner peace if your outer life is filled with deception and harm. Every time we lie or steal or hurt another, we create turbulence in our own minds. The Buddha taught that integrity is not just a moral rule, but a strategic necessity for mental health. Living with honesty and kindness creates a safety zone around you where the mind can finally relax. Then there is the pillar of mental discipline, which includes mindfulness and meditation. This is the gym where we build the muscle of attention. In a world designed to fracture our focus, the ability to pay attention is a superpower. Meditation is not about escaping reality or having mystical visions. It is the simple and difficult practice of staying with your experience, whatever it may be. You sit and watch your breath, and you watch your thoughts drift by like clouds. You learn to catch the mind when it wanders into the past or future and gently bring it back. This practice creates a gap between the stimulus and your response. In that gap lies your freedom. When someone insults you, you notice the sting, but you do not have to immediately fire back. When you fail at a task, you feel the disappointment, but you do not have to spiral into self-hatred. You realize that you are not your thoughts, and you are not your emotions. You are the vast awareness in which these things arise and pass away. This realization brings a tremendous sense of lightness and humor. You stop taking yourself so seriously. You see the absurdity of the ego trying to control the universe. You begin to walk through life with a sense of playfulness and ease. The chaotic world will continue to spin, and disasters will happen and things will break. But you have built a sanctuary inside yourself that cannot be touched by the external storms. This is the ultimate refuge. It is not a place you go to hide, but a source of strength you carry with you everywhere. You become a light for others not because you preach to them, but because your presence is calm. In a room full of panic, the person who is grounded becomes the center of gravity. By healing your own mind, you contribute to the healing of the world. You realize that the journey is not about becoming someone new. It is about unbecoming everything that is not you until only the truth remains. This is the path of the warrior who fights not with weapons, but with awareness. We return now to the edge of the ocean where we started. The waves are still crashing and the wind is still howling. The difference is that you are no longer afraid of the water. You understand that the nature of the ocean is to move and change. You do not need to silence the waves to find peace. You have found a stillness that exists in the center of the movement. The teachings of the Buddha are an invitation to wake up from the dream of separation. They invite you to put down the heavy armor you have worn for so long, to look at suffering with clear eyes and see the freedom hidden within it. Walk gently on this earth and be kind to yourself and others. The peace you seek is already here, waiting for you to stop running. Just breathe. Most of us wake up with a subtle feeling of anxiety that we cannot quite name. It is a quiet hum in the back of the mind that refuses to go away. We check our phones and we look for something to fill the silence. We chase achievements and we gather possessions, hoping they will make us feel complete. This is not a uniquely modern problem. It is the fundamental human condition. 2,500 years ago, a man named Siddhartha Gautama felt this same unease. He had everything the world could offer, including wealth and status and pleasure. Yet he felt a hollow space inside that no amount of luxury could fill. He realized that comfort does not equal peace. He stepped out of his palace to find the root of this human struggle. He wanted to know why we suffer and how we can stop it. He stripped away the layers of his identity to see what remained beneath. What he found was not a god or a mystical force. He found the machinery of the human mind. The investigation began with a brutally honest look at the nature of existence. The Buddha did not start with faith or belief. He started with observation. He looked at the world and he saw a cycle that never seemed to stop. He saw that birth leads to aging, and aging leads to sickness, and sickness leads to death. He saw that we are constantly parted from the things we love. He saw that we are forced to endure the things we hate. He called this state dukkha, which is often translated as suffering. But the word means something much deeper than just physical pain or sadness. It refers to a wheel that is off-center. It implies a sense of unsatisfactoriness and a fundamental instability in life. No matter how good a moment is, it will eventually change. No matter how much we achieve, we will eventually want more. The Buddha asked the difficult question of why this happens. He traced the root cause back to a specific kind of mental energy. He identified this root as tanha, which literally translates to thirst. It is an unquenchable craving that drives us forward. Imagine a person walking through a hot desert without water. They are desperate for relief, and that desperation consumes their entire reality. In our daily lives, we thirst for sensory stability. We want the good moments to freeze in time and last forever. We want the bad moments to vanish immediately. We are constantly pulling things toward us or pushing them away. This friction between what is happening and what we want to happen is the root of our stress. The Buddha saw that we are constantly at war with reality. We demand that the world behave according to our desires. When the world refuses to comply, we feel anger and disappointment. This thirst is not just for physical pleasure. It is also a thirst for existence and for validation. We want to be seen and we want to be important. We crave an identity that is solid and permanent. We build walls around our ego to protect it from criticism. But the Buddha observed that this very act of building walls creates isolation. The more we cling to our desires, the more we suffer when they are not met. He realized that the root cause is not the external world. The problem is not the traffic, or the difficult boss, or the fading health. The problem is our reaction to those things. The problem is the thirst that demands they be different. We spend our lives trying to rearrange the furniture of the world to make it comfortable. But the Buddha taught that true peace comes from rearranging the mind. He discovered that this thirst is fueled by a deep misunderstanding. We believe that if we just get that one next thing, we will finally be happy. We chase the horizon, and it always moves further away. This cycle of chasing and disappointment is what keeps the wheel of suffering turning. He saw that we are addicted to the pursuit. We are addicted to the promise of a future satisfaction that never fully arrives. This was the first major breakthrough in his analysis. He identified the enemy, and it was not out there. It was in here. The Buddha did not stop at simply identifying the thirst. He needed to understand how it operated within the architecture of the mind. He performed a deep psychological analysis of how a human being experiences reality. He broke down the entire process of perception into a chain of events. This is often called dependent origination, but we can think of it as a domino effect. It begins with ignorance or a lack of clear seeing. We do not see things as they really are. We see them through the filter of our past experiences and our fears and our hopes. Because we are unable to see clearly, we form mental patterns and habits. These habits condition our consciousness. We become reactive rather than responsive. The Buddha traced the moment when suffering actually begins. It happens at the point of contact. We have eyes and ears, and a nose, and a tongue, and a body, and a mind. These are our 6 sensors that interface with the world. When a sound hits the ear or an image hits the eye, contact occurs. Immediately after contact comes feeling. This is not an emotion like sadness or joy. It is a raw tone of experience. Every sensation we feel is instantly categorized by the deep mind. We label it as pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. This happens in a split second before we are even consciously aware of it. If the sensation is pleasant, a subtle desire arises to keep it. If the sensation is unpleasant, a subtle resistance arises to push it away. This is the pivotal moment where the chain can be broken. However, most of us are asleep at the wheel. We let the pleasant feeling turn into craving. We let the unpleasant feeling turn into aversion. The Buddha saw that this reaction is automatic for the untrained mind. The craving then leads to clinging. We attach ourselves to the feeling and we identify with it. We say to ourselves that I need this to be happy, or we say that I cannot tolerate this pain. This clinging solidifies our sense of self. We create a story about who we are based on what we like and dislike. This is the birth of the ego in every single moment. The Buddha realized that we are constantly being reborn in this way. Every time we react with craving or aversion, we reinforce the pattern. We deepen the groove in the mind. This is why habits are so hard to break. We are fighting against neural pathways that we have reinforced for a lifetime. The analysis showed that suffering is not a punishment from above. It is a mechanical process of cause and effect. It is a biological and psychological reaction to stimulation. The Buddha saw that we are slaves to this process. We are pulled around by our senses like a bull with a ring in its nose. We see something beautiful and we run toward it. We hear something harsh and we recoil in anger. We are not free because we are constantly reacting. The wisdom of the Buddha was in slowing down this process. He wanted to put a gap between the match and the fuse. He saw that if we could observe the feeling without reacting, the chain would break. If we could feel the pleasant sensation without clinging, then we would remain free. If we could feel the unpleasant sensation without resisting, then we would suffer no mental anguish. The pain might still be there in the body, but the suffering in the mind would dissolve. This analysis shifted the focus from changing the world to changing our relationship with the world. It placed the power back into the hands of the individual. We do not have to be victims of our conditioning. We can understand the mechanism and we can dismantle it piece by piece. This required a tremendous amount of focus and inner stillness. It required the cultivation of a mind that is sharp enough to catch the reaction before it takes root. The Buddha saw the trap clearly. Now he had to formulate the way out. The immediate reaction to this diagnosis is often fear or confusion. We hear that desire is the root of suffering, and we panic. We think that if we stop wanting things, we will become vegetables. We imagine a life where we sit on a rock and do absolutely nothing. This is the great counterpoint that the Western mind struggles with. We are raised in a culture that worships ambition and drive. We are told that we must be hungry and we must be relentless. So when the Buddha says to let go of thirst, we feel a deep resistance. We ask how we can build a career or raise a family without desire. But the Buddha was not teaching a doctrine of nihilism. He was not telling us to become indifferent zombies who do not care about the world. He was pointing toward a specific kind of balance that is very difficult to find. He called this the middle way. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha tried the path of extreme deprivation. He starved himself until his ribs showed through his skin. He held his breath until he nearly collapsed. He thought that by punishing the body, he could liberate the mind. But he realized that a weak body leads to a weak mind. He also knew that a life of pure indulgence leads to a soft and distracted mind. Imagine a string on a musical instrument, like a guitar or a sitar. If the string is wound too tight, it will snap under the tension. If the string is too loose, it will not make a sound. The string must be tuned to the perfect tension to create music. This is the counterpoint to our extreme way of living. We oscillate between working ourselves to death and numbing ourselves completely. The Buddha proposed a path of wise engagement. We can have goals, but we must not attach our self-worth to the outcome. We can love people, but we must understand that we cannot possess them. The counterpoint teaches us to act with intention rather than desperation. When we act from a place of desperation, we make mistakes. We are blind to the risks because we are so focused on the reward. But when we act from a place of calm clarity, we are much more effective. We can see the situation fully, and we can make better decisions. The struggle lies in the ego, which refuses to let go of control. The ego believes that if it worries enough, it can prevent bad things from happening. It believes that anxiety is a form of protection. The Buddha challenged this illusion directly. He showed that worrying does not change the future, but it ruins the present. This phase of understanding requires a tremendous amount of courage. It requires us to face the void that we have been trying to fill. We have to sit with the boredom and the loneliness and the fear. We have to let them arise without reaching for the phone or the food or the drink. This is where the real work of the spiritual warrior begins. It is not about escaping reality in a mystical trance. It is about facing the raw texture of reality without flinching. It is about realizing that the resistance to the pain is worse than the pain itself. When we stop fighting the current, we can finally learn how to swim. The counterpoint is the realization that surrender is not a weakness. It is the ultimate form of strength. It takes no effort to be angry or greedy or jealous. Those are gravity pulling us down. It takes massive strength to remain calm when things go wrong. It takes power to remain generous when we are afraid of scarcity. The Buddha showed us that true power is not power over others. It is power over our own reactions. Once we stop fighting the diagnosis, we can apply the cure. The Buddha called the end of suffering nirvana. This is a word that has been mystified and misunderstood for centuries. It does not mean a heaven in the clouds with harps and gold gates. The literal translation of nirvana is to blow out. It is the image of blowing out a candle flame that has been burning furiously. The flame is the three fires of greed and hatred and delusion. When these fires are extinguished, the mind becomes cool. This realization is available to everyone, and not just monks in caves. It starts with the practice of mindfulness or clear seeing. We begin to watch the mind as if we are sitting on the bank of a river. The thoughts and emotions are the water flowing by. Sometimes the water is muddy and turbulent. Sometimes the water is clear and calm. We do not jump into the river and get swept away. We simply watch it flow. In this state of observation, we discover a profound truth called anicca, or impermanence. We see that anger arises and stays for a while, and then passes away. We see that joy arises and stays for a while, and then passes away. Nothing is solid, and nothing is permanent. When we truly understand this in our bones, we stop clinging. Why would we cling to a cloud that is changing shape every second? Why would we define ourselves by a mood that will be gone in an hour? This leads to the most radical realization of all, which is the lack of a fixed self. If our body is changing, and our thoughts are changing, and our feelings are changing, then who are we? The Buddha taught that the idea of a solid separate self is an illusion. It is this illusion that feels the pain. It is the I that says I am hurt or I am insulted. When we see through this illusion, the suffering loses its target. There is pain, but there is no one owning the pain. There is experience, but there is no experiencer trapped inside. This sounds abstract, but it is intensely practical. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the anger rises. With this realization, you see the anger as a physiological event. You feel the heat in the chest and the tension in the hands. You acknowledge it and you let it pass through. You do not become the anger. You remain the vast open space in which the anger happens. This space is untouched by the chaos of the world. It is a sanctuary that you carry with you everywhere you go. You can find this peace in the middle of a busy office or a crowded subway. The Buddha laid out the Eightfold Path as the map to maintain this state. It involves living ethically and speaking truthfully and focusing the mind. It is a system of training the brain to stay awake. The realization is that we are already free. We have just trapped ourselves in a cage of our own making. The door to the cage is wide open, and it always has been. We just have to stop staring at the bars. We have to turn around and walk out into the open air. The root of suffering is severed not by force but by wisdom. When the light is turned on, the darkness does not fight back. It simply vanishes. This is the promise of the Buddha. Peace is not something you add to your life. It is what remains when you remove the confusion. The journey to the root of suffering is the most important journey you can take. It does not require you to change your name or wear robes. It requires you to be brave enough to look inside. Start by noticing the thirst in your own life today. Notice the constant itch for the next moment to be better than this one. Take a deep breath and let that tension go. Observe the world without demanding that it pleases you. Find the strength that comes from standing in the center of the storm. The world will always be chaotic and unpredictable, but your mind can be a fortress of calm. You have the capacity for infinite wisdom and infinite peace. The key is already in your hand. Turn it. Be free. We wake up every day to a noise that never seems to stop. It is a constant hum of demands and expectations that pulls at our attention from the moment we open our eyes. In this modern landscape, we are told that happiness is just one purchase or one achievement away. We run faster and work harder, believing that eventually we will arrive at a place of permanent rest. Yet, the finish line keeps moving. We feel an underlying current of anxiety, a sense that something is not quite right, even when everything looks perfect on the surface. 2,500 years ago, a man sat beneath a tree and faced this exact dilemma. He did not turn away from the darkness of the human condition. Instead, he looked directly into the heart of our struggle. The Buddha made a radical promise that remains as relevant today as it was in ancient times. He declared that the complete cessation of suffering is not a myth, but a practical reality. This is not about escaping the world, but about fundamentally changing how we experience it. The journey begins by looking at the very root of why we suffer. We often believe that our pain comes from the outside world. We blame the difficult boss, the broken relationship, or the traffic jam for our frustration. It seems logical to think that if we could just arrange the world perfectly, we would finally be at peace. However, the Buddha offered a different diagnosis that turns this logic upside down. He suggested that the root of our distress is not in the events themselves, but in our reaction to them. Imagine for a moment that you are walking through a forest and you are struck by a falling branch. There is immediate physical pain, which is natural and unavoidable. But then, almost instantly, the mind begins to tell a story. We become angry at the forest. We worry about the injury, and we feel like a victim of bad luck. This mental reaction is what the Buddha called the second arrow. The first arrow is the raw event of life, which brings inevitable pain or discomfort. The second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves through our resistance and our narration. Most of the suffering we experience in our daily lives is this second arrow. It is the sleepless nights spent replaying a conversation that went wrong. It is the anxiety about a future that has not yet happened. We are driven by a powerful thirst that the texts call tanha, or craving. This is not just a desire for food or comfort, but a deep existential hunger for things to be different than they are. We crave for pleasant experiences to last forever, even though we know they must end. We crave for unpleasant experiences to vanish immediately, even though we know we must endure them. This friction between reality and our desires is the primary cause of our stress. We are constantly at war with the present moment. In the United States, this craving often manifests as a relentless drive for more. We are conditioned to define our worth by our productivity and our possessions. When we do not get what we want, we suffer. Even when we do get what we want, we suffer because we immediately fear losing it. We cling to our status, our youth, and our opinions as if they were solid objects that could protect us. This attachment acts like a clenched fist. The tighter we hold on, the more tension we create in our bodies and our minds. The Buddha taught that we are trying to hold on to water. The harder we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. We spend our energy building fortresses around our egos, trying to defend an image of ourselves that is constantly changing. This defense mechanism is exhausting. It depletes our inner strength and leaves us feeling brittle. We become easily shattered by the slightest criticism or setback. To find the cessation of suffering, we must first admit that this strategy of clinging is not working. We must acknowledge that the chase for external validation is a game that cannot be won. This realization is the first step toward true freedom. It requires a brave and honest look at our own patterns of behavior. We have to see the hook before we bite it. We have to recognize the craving before it drags us away. By understanding the root, we stop watering the seeds of our own misery. Once we identify the root of our struggle, we must move into a deeper analysis of our reality. This is not an intellectual exercise, but a method of direct observation. The Buddha encouraged his followers to become scientists of their own experience. We need to place our own minds under the microscope. When we look closely at the things we worry about, we notice a fundamental truth that we often ignore. Everything is in a state of constant flux. This is the law of impermanence. In our culture, we often view change as a threat or a failure. We want our relationships to stay exactly as they were during the honeymoon phase. We want our bodies to remain as they were in our 20s. We want the stock market to only go up, but the nature of the universe is movement. Seasons change, empires fall, and thoughts arise and pass away. Our suffering comes from our refusal to accept this flow. We try to freeze time. We build dams to stop the river, but the water always breaks through, causing a flood of despair. The analysis requires us to watch how we fight against this current. Notice what happens when you are stuck in a long line at the grocery store. The reality is simply that you are standing and waiting, but the mind creates a turbulent storm of impatience. You check the time, you judge the cashier, and you tense your shoulders. You are fighting the reality of the present moment. The analysis asks us to question who is actually suffering in this moment. We take it for granted that there is a solid, permanent self that is experiencing this annoyance. We say that I am angry or I am bored, but if we look for this self, we cannot find it. We find only a bundle of sensations, thoughts, and memories that are constantly changing. The anger is just a wave of energy passing through the body. The boredom is just a thought pattern repeating itself. There is no little person inside our heads pulling the levers. This insight is known as the realization of non-self. It sounds abstract, but it is incredibly practical. If there is no solid target, the arrows of life pass right through. When we stop taking everything so personally, the weight of the world lifts off our shoulders. We realize that the insults of others are just sounds moving through the air, driven by their own pain. We realize that our failures are just events in a long chain of cause and effect, not definitions of our soul. This analytical approach allows us to create space between the stimulus and the response. In that space, we find our power. We stop being puppets of our emotions. We gain the ability to choose how we engage with the world. Instead of reacting with blind habit, we can respond with wisdom. We begin to see that the monsters we fear are often just shadows on the wall. The anxiety that keeps us awake is often just a projection of a future that does not exist. The regret that weighs us down is just a memory of a past that is already gone. By analyzing the present moment with clarity, we strip away these illusions. We see things as they actually are, not as we fear them to be. This clear seeing is the beginning of true strength. It is like turning on the lights in a dark room. The furniture is still there, but we no longer bump into it. We navigate the complexities of life with a new sense of balance. We stop demanding that the world be smooth and comfortable. We learn to walk with stability over rough terrain. This analysis requires patience and persistence. It is a practice of returning, again and again, to the raw data of our experience. We peel back the layers of judgment and interpretation. We sit with the discomfort without trying to fix it immediately. In doing so, we discover that the discomfort is not as solid as we thought. It shifts, it changes, and eventually, it dissolves. This is the breaking of the spell. We see the machinery of suffering for what it is, and once we see the machine clearly, we can begin to dismantle it. It is easy to misunderstand the nature of this path. When we hear about acceptance and letting go, the modern mind often recoils. We are taught that to accept things as they are is to be weak. We fear that if we stop struggling, we will lose our edge. There is a pervasive belief that anxiety is the fuel for our success. We think that without the constant pressure of stress, we would simply stop moving. This is the great counterpoint that we must address with clarity. The Buddha did not teach passivity. He did not suggest that we should sit idly while the world burns around us. Equanimity is not the same thing as indifference. Indifference is a withdrawal, a cold closing of the heart. Equanimity is a balanced engagement, a radical openness to whatever arises. Think of the surgeon in the operating room. If the surgeon is frantic, panicked, and overwhelmed by emotion, their hands will shake. They might make a fatal error because they are too attached to the fear of failure. But the surgeon who is calm, focused, and present can act with precision. They care deeply about the outcome, but they are grounded in the process. This is the essence of the Buddha's warrior spirit. We are invited to act with intense purpose, but without the crippling weight of attachment. We do the work because it is the right thing to do, not just for the applause. When we decouple our actions from the desperate need for a specific result, we actually become more effective. We free up the vast amount of energy that was previously consumed by worry. Imagine how much more you could achieve if you were not constantly second-guessing yourself. Imagine the strength of your relationships if you were not demanding that they validate your ego. The counterpoint teaches us that true power comes from stillness, not chaos. We can stand in the middle of a storm and remain unshaken. This is particularly vital in our polarized society. We are constantly baited into anger and division. The media landscape is designed to trigger our outrage and keep us in a state of reaction. To practice the cessation of suffering is an act of rebellion. It is a refusal to let the external world dictate our internal state. We become like a mountain. The winds of praise and blame blow back and forth. The weather of gain and loss shifts from day to day. But the mountain simply sits, grounded and majestic. It does not bow down to the storm. This stability allows us to feel compassion without being destroyed by the suffering of others. We can look at the pain in the world and offer our hand, but we do not drown in the sorrow. We maintain a cool head and a warm heart. This is the middle way between suppression and indulgence. We do not pretend that pain does not exist, for that is spiritual bypassing. Nor do we wallow in the drama of the pain, for that is victimization. We acknowledge the difficulty, we breathe into it, and we do what is necessary. This approach transforms obstacles into the path itself. Every difficult person becomes a teacher of patience. Every failure becomes a lesson in humility. Every loss becomes a reminder of what truly matters. We stop being victims of circumstance and start becoming masters of our own minds. The cessation of suffering does not mean the end of pain. It means the end of the unnecessary mental torture we add to the pain. It is the ability to say yes to this moment, even if this moment is hard. In that yes, the resistance melts away. The tension in the jaw releases. The tightness in the chest opens up. We find that we can handle much more than we thought possible. We discover an inner reservoir of resilience that depends on nothing outside of ourselves. This is the promise of the counterpoint. It turns the pursuit of happiness into the practice of presence. We stop chasing a future that never comes and start inhabiting the life we actually have. Now we arrive at the possibility of realization. This is where the philosophy must become an experience. The cessation of suffering is not a theoretical concept to be debated in universities. It is a tangible state of being that can be tasted here and now. The texts refer to this as nirvana, a word that simply means to blow out or to extinguish. It is the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. But what is left when the fire goes out? It is not emptiness in the negative sense. It is a profound sense of cool, clear relief. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for 10 miles uphill. The straps dig into your shoulders, and your back aches with every step. Suddenly, you reach the summit, and you drop the pack. That sensation of weightlessness, of pure release, is a glimpse of the goal. We are so used to the noise of our own minds that we do not realize how loud it is until it stops. The realization comes when we catch a gap between the thoughts. Usually, our thoughts are like a bumper-to-bumper traffic jam. One thought triggers the next, with no space in between. But through practice and clear intention, the traffic begins to thin out. We begin to notice the silence that holds the sound. We begin to notice the space that holds the objects. In this space, there is no suffering. There is simply awareness. This awareness is not male or female, young or old, rich or poor. It is the pure witness of your life. When we rest in this awareness, we realize that we are not the story we have been telling ourselves. We are the screen on which the movie plays, not the tragedy unfolding in the film. The screen is never burned by the fire in the movie. The screen is never wet by the water in the movie. This realization brings a fearless quality to our lives. If we know that our true nature cannot be harmed by the ups and downs of life, we are free to live fully. We can take risks, we can love deeply, and we can speak our truth. We are no longer protecting a fragile ego. We are operating from a place of wholeness. In the United States, we are often sold the idea that we are broken and need fixing. We are told we need more self-improvement, more optimization, more hacking of our biology. The Buddha's realization is that there is nothing to fix. The gold is already there, buried under the mud. We do not need to create the gold. We only need to wash away the mud. This shift in perspective is immediate and radical. It means that peace is available in the checkout line, in the traffic jam, and in the difficult meeting. We simply have to remember to look for it. We have to remember to drop the second arrow. We breathe in and know that we are breathing in. We breathe out and know that we are breathing out. In that single conscious breath, the past and future dissolve. There is only this, and in this, there is enough. The craving mind says that this moment is insufficient. The realized mind sees that this moment is the only place where life actually happens. We stop waiting for the weekend. We stop waiting for retirement. We engage with the texture of reality as it presents itself. The colors become brighter, and the sounds become sharper. Life becomes vivid again, like it was when we were children. We are no longer sleepwalking through our days. We are awake to the miracle of consciousness itself. This is the ultimate freedom. It is not a freedom from the world, but a freedom within the world. It is the ability to move through the marketplace with a quiet mind. It is the capacity to hold the sorrows of the world without being crushed by them. The realization is that the cage door has been open the entire time. We have been pacing back and forth, grabbing the bars, convinced we are trapped. All we have to do is turn around and walk out. The path is not a distance to be traveled. It is a waking up to what is already here. The journey we have taken is one of return. We started by looking at the chaos and the noise that defines our modern existence. We traced the roots of our distress back to our own craving and our resistance to change. We analyzed the illusions of the ego and the impermanence of all things. We stood firm in the counterpoint, finding strength in stillness and action in non-attachment. And finally, we glimpsed the realization that freedom is always available in the present moment. The Buddha's promise is not a fairy tale. It is a standing invitation to every human being. It asks us to be brave enough to look at our own minds. It challenges us to drop the heavy burdens we have carried for so long. You do not need to become a monk or live in a cave to find this peace. You only need to be willing to stop the war with reality. Take a breath. Look around you. This moment is your life, and it is entirely possible to be free. Imagine a world that never stops moving, never stops shouting, and never allows you a moment of true silence. This is the reality we navigate every single day. We are bombarded by signals, demands, and the relentless pressure to be more than we are. In this chaotic storm, the mind becomes fragmented, anxious, and deeply weary. 2,500 years ago, a man looked at this same human condition and saw it not as a punishment, but as an illness. He did not look to the sky for a savior, nor did he ask for magic to wash away the pain. Instead, he looked inward, observing the intricate machinery of the human mind with the precision of a surgeon. He realized that our suffering is not imposed by the world, but manufactured by our reaction to it. The Buddha, the awakened one, did not merely found a religion, he established a therapeutic remedy, a systematic cure designed to heal the fractured human spirit. This is not a story of worship, but a story of regaining control. It is a guide to developing inner strength in a world that tries to strip it away. Let us walk the path he laid out, the path that transforms the chaos into clarity. To understand the remedy, we must first understand the diagnosis. The Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree not to escape the world, but to confront it with absolute honesty. He saw that the root of our anxiety and dissatisfaction lies in a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. We cling to things that are destined to change, and we run from things that are inevitable. This creates a friction in the soul, a constant grinding gear that we call suffering. The first step in his therapeutic course is what he called right view. This is the cognitive foundation of the entire healing process. It is the act of seeing the world exactly as it is, without the distortion of our desires or fears. Most of us walk through life wearing lenses colored by our past traumas and future anxieties. We tell ourselves stories about who we are, stories about being unworthy, or stories about needing validation. Right view asks us to take off those glasses. It asks us to recognize that everything is impermanent, shifting like the tides of an ocean. When we accept that change is the only constant, we stop fighting against the current. We stop trying to hold on to moments that have already passed. This acceptance is the first dose of medicine for the anxious mind. It allows us to step back and observe our lives with a sense of detachment, rather than being drowning in the drama. But seeing the truth is only the beginning. The Buddha understood that insight must be powered by resolve. This brings us to the second aspect of the cure, which is right intention. If right view is the map, then right intention is the steering wheel. It is the conscious decision to move toward mental health and away from toxicity. In a therapeutic context, this means setting a deliberate course for your life. It is the cultivation of goodwill, the decision to let go of resentment, and the commitment to non-harming. Think of how much energy is wasted on holding grudges or replaying old arguments in the shower. That energy is a finite resource. Right intention is the therapeutic practice of reclaiming that energy. It is deciding that you will no longer poison your own well with thoughts of ill will or greed. It is a shift from a reactive state, where we are pushed around by our emotions, to a proactive state. We decide that we want to be free. We decide that we want peace more than we want to be right. This is a profound psychological shift. It moves us from the role of the victim to the role of the architect. The Buddha taught that our intentions shape our reality before we even speak a word or lift a finger. If the mind is filled with the intention of kindness and renunciation of clinging, the external world becomes less threatening. This is the root of the therapy. It begins in the quiet, invisible spaces of the mind. It starts with how we perceive our existence and what we decide to do with that perception. Before we can change our actions, we must change the lens through which we view the world. We must align our compass with the true north of wisdom. This internal alignment provides the stability required to face the external chaos. It is the anchor that holds the ship steady when the storm begins to rage. Once the mind is oriented correctly, the therapy moves from the internal to the external. The Buddha understood that we do not exist in a vacuum. We are social creatures, constantly interacting with others and the environment around us. These interactions create a feedback loop that either heals us or harms us. Therefore, the next phase of the Eightfold Path focuses on ethical conduct, not as a set of moral commandments, but as a therapeutic necessity. This begins with right speech. In the modern era, our words travel faster and further than ever before. We text, we comment, we post, and we speak, often without a second thought. But words are containers of energy. When we speak with anger, deceit, or divisiveness, we are not just hurting others, we are reinforcing those negative pathways in our own brains. Lying creates a complex web of tension, requiring constant mental energy to maintain. Gossip breeds paranoia. As we begin to fear others are doing the same to us, harsh speech solidifies our own anger, making it a permanent resident in our hearts. The Buddha prescribed right speech as a way to clean up our mental environment. It means speaking the truth, speaking with kindness, and knowing when to remain silent. There is a tremendous therapeutic power in silence. By refusing to engage in useless chatter or toxic arguments, we preserve our inner peace. We stop feeding the fire of conflict. Following speech comes right action. This is the physical manifestation of our inner state. It is the commitment to refrain from harming living beings, stealing, or engaging in sexual misconduct. Again, viewed through a therapeutic lens, this is about removing sources of regret and anxiety. When we harm others, we create enemies and we create guilt. Guilt is a heavy burden that weighs down the subconscious mind, preventing true relaxation. By living a life of integrity, we have nothing to hide. We can look anyone in the eye. We can sleep soundly at night, knowing we have not caused suffering to another being. This lack of remorse is a powerful component of mental stability. It creates a safe foundation upon which we can build a higher state of consciousness. Right action is about acting in a way that is consistent with the peace we seek. If we want a peaceful world, we must be peaceful actors within it. Finally, this section of the cure addresses how we sustain our existence, known as right livelihood. We spend a vast majority of our waking hours at work. If our profession requires us to be deceitful, aggressive, or exploitative, it will inevitably poison our minds. You cannot spend 8 hours a day practicing greed or harm and expect to be peaceful in the evening. The Buddha advised us to earn our living in a way that causes no harm and brings benefit to others. In a modern context, this challenges us to examine our careers. Does our work align with our values? Does it contribute to the collective well-being, or does it subtract from it? When our livelihood is in harmony with our principles, we eliminate a massive source of cognitive dissonance. We feel a sense of purpose rather than a sense of drudgery. Work becomes a form of service, an extension of our practice. This integration of our economic life with our spiritual life is crucial for holistic health. It ensures that we are not living a divided life, where we are one person on Sunday and a different person on Monday. This consistency builds a robust character, capable of withstanding stress. By refining our speech, our actions, and our livelihood, We create a protective barrier around our minds. We stop inviting drama and chaos into our lives. We create the external conditions that make internal peace possible. It is impossible to meditate deeply if your life is on fire with conflict. Therefore, we calm the waters of our daily interactions first. We build a vessel of integrity that can carry us across the turbulent sea. This is the practical application of the cure, the daily regimen that strengthens the immune system of the soul. It prepares us for the deeper, more subtle work that lies ahead. With our external world stabilized and our ethical foundation laid, we turn our attention to the engine room of existence. We enter the domain of the mind itself, the place where our reality is constantly being manufactured. The Buddha understood that a calm life is not enough if the mind remains a chaotic storm of uncontrolled impulses. This brings us to the mental discipline aspect of the cure, beginning with right effort. This is often the most misunderstood part of the path. It is not about straining or forcing the mind into submission through sheer willpower. Rather, right effort is the art of gardening the psyche. Imagine your mind as a plot of fertile soil. Seeds are constantly landing there, blown in by the winds of sensory experience. Some seeds are weeds, like anger, jealousy, and despair. Other seeds are flowers, like compassion, gratitude, and resilience. Right effort is the diligent practice of noticing which seeds are taking root. It involves 4 specific tasks that function like a cognitive security system. First, we prevent negative states from arising before they even start. We avoid triggers and situations that we know will drag us down into darkness. Second, if a negative state has already arisen, we work to abandon it. We do not feed the anger. We let it starve by withdrawing our attention. Third, we actively cultivate positive mental states that are not yet present. We consciously choose to practice kindness or patience, even when we do not feel like it. Fourth, when a positive state arises, we sustain it and help it grow. This is the therapeutic practice of neuroplasticity in action. We are literally rewiring the brain by choosing which neural pathways to reinforce and which to let atrophy. It requires a gentle but persistent energy, a refusal to be a passive victim of our own thoughts. But effort alone can be blind without the illuminating light of the next step. This is right mindfulness, perhaps the most famous yet diluted aspect of the Buddha's teachings in the West. In its true therapeutic form, mindfulness is not just about relaxation or stress reduction. It is a radical act of presence. It is the ability to see things as they are arising, without judgment, without commentary, and without attachment. Most of us live our lives on autopilot, lost in regrets about the past or fantasies about the future. We are rarely home when life actually knocks on the door. Right, mindfulness asks us to inhabit our bodies and our minds fully. It is the practice of becoming the observer. When anxiety rises, instead of saying, "I am anxious," the mindful observer notes, there is anxiety present. This slight linguistic shift represents a massive psychological breakthrough. It creates a gap between the stimulus and the response. In that gap, we find our freedom. We realize that we are not our thoughts, and we are not our emotions. We are the space in which these weather patterns occur. By maintaining this continuous awareness, we stop reacting blindly to every impulse. We gain the ability to pause. We can look at a flash of anger, acknowledge it, and let it pass like a cloud across the sky. This is the ultimate tool for emotional regulation. It strips the ego of its power to hijack our nervous system. Mindfulness anchors us in the only moment that actually exists, which is the present. It heals the fragmentation of the mind, bringing our scattered attention back to a singular point of clarity. It prepares the ground for the final and most profound deepening of the cure. We move from merely observing the mind to unifying it completely. The final stage of this therapeutic journey brings us to the pinnacle of mental cultivation. This is right concentration, or samadhi. In a world that monetizes our distraction, the ability to focus is a superpower, but right concentration goes beyond simple productivity or focus. It is the development of a unified, single-pointedness of mind. It is the state where the chattering voice in the head finally falls silent. The Buddha described this as a state of deep absorption, where the subject and the object merge. Think of a musician lost in the music, or an athlete in the zone. There is no self-consciousness, no doubt, only the pure flow of experience. Therapeutically, this state is the antidote to the scattered, fragmented nature of modern consciousness. Our minds are usually like a broken mirror, reflecting reality in 1,000 distorted shards. Right concentration fuses those shards back into a single, polished surface. When the mind is this still, it becomes incredibly powerful. It becomes a tool capable of penetrating the surface of reality to see the truth underneath. This is where the therapy transforms into liberation. With a concentrated mind, we can direct the beam of our awareness onto the nature of the self. We begin to see, with direct experience, the truth of impermanence that we understood intellectually at the start. We see that the thing we call the self is not a solid entity. It is a process, a flowing river of thoughts, sensations, and memories. This realization is the ultimate medicine. If there is no solid self to protect, there is no need to be defensive. If there is no permanent ego to satisfy, there is no need for greed. If we are interconnected with everything, there is no room for hatred. This is the release of the burden we have carried for lifetimes. The anxiety of trying to be someone, of trying to prove our worth, simply evaporates. We realize that we are already complete. The therapeutic process of the Eightfold Path leads us to this profound conclusion. Suffering is not a necessary condition of existence. It is an option that we can decline. The Buddha did not promise that life would be free of pain. Bodies will still get sick, loved ones will still die, and things will still break. But he promised that we could face these inevitable tragedies without the added layer of mental anguish. We can experience pain without suffering. We can stand in the middle of the fire and not be burned. This is the state of the Arhat, the one who has laid down the burden. It is a state of unshakable peace, a happiness that is not dependent on external conditions. Most of our happiness is fragile because it relies on things going our way. We are happy if we get the promotion, if the weather is nice, if people like us. The peace offered by the Buddha is robust and independent. It wells up from within, born of wisdom and discipline. It is the strength of a mountain that remains unmoved by the wind. This is the goal of the therapy, not to numb us to the world, but to awaken us to its true nature, to empower us to live fully, love deeply, and let go completely. It turns the human mind from a factory of misery into a sanctuary of peace. The Eightfold Path is the blueprint for this transformation. It is a legacy of compassion left by a man who saw our pain and showed us the way out. It is the ultimate triumph of the human spirit over its own conditioning. The journey we have described is not a relic of the ancient past. It is a living, breathing guide for the modern soul. The Buddha was not asking for blind faith. He was inviting us to come and see for ourselves. He offered a challenge to test these teachings in the laboratory of our own lives. In a world that feels increasingly fractured, this path offers a way to become whole. It reminds us that peace is not something we find in a distant land or a future achievement. It is something we cultivate, breath by breath, thought by thought, action by action. You possess the raw materials for this transformation right now. You have a mind, you have an intention, and you have this present moment. The cure is in your hands. Walk the path with courage. Be the architect of your own peace. And in doing so, you become a light for a world that desperately needs it. We spend our entire lives building fortresses to keep chaos out. Yet the thicker the walls, the more suffocating the air inside becomes. We chase control, believing it is the same thing as safety. But the moment the ground shakes, we realize we never held the reins at all. This is the great paradox of the modern human experience. We have mastered the external world, bending rivers and splitting atoms. However, we remain terrified of the storms that rage within our own chests. You are not suffering because the world is harsh. You are suffering because you expect it to be soft. The Buddha did not teach a way to escape the rain. He taught a way to stop fearing the water. Let us look directly at the nature of adversity. Let us strip away the comfortable lies we tell ourselves. It is time to stand still in the center of the chaos. Imagine for a moment that you are walking through a dense forest. Suddenly, a heavy branch snaps and strikes your shoulder. There is a sharp, immediate sensation of pain. Your nerves fire, your muscles tense, and your body reacts to protect itself. This is a physical reality. This is an event that has occurred in time and space. In the teachings of the Buddha, this is known as the first arrow. It is the arrow of inevitable hardship. No one can escape this arrow. It does not matter if you are a king or a beggar. It does not matter if you are virtuous or corrupt. It does not matter if you have millions in the bank or nothing in your pocket. The nature of having a body is that it will eventually break down. The nature of having loved ones is that you will eventually be separated from them. The nature of building a career or a legacy is that it can crumble due to forces you cannot predict. We often view these events as mistakes. We look at a diagnosis, a layoff, or a sudden accident as a glitch in the system. We feel that something has gone wrong with the universe. But the Buddha viewed this differently. He saw adversity not as a flaw, but as a feature of existence. The world is in a constant state of flux. Seasons change, empires fall, and mountains erode into sand. This is not a tragedy. It is simply the mechanics of reality. When we face a crisis, our first instinct is often denial. We stare at the wreckage of a plan and refuse to believe it is happening. This resistance is the beginning of our exhaustion. We spend immense amounts of energy trying to hold back the tide. We try to freeze time. We try to force the world to remain exactly as we want it to be. But the world does not answer to our demands. The root of our struggle with adversity is often our refusal to accept that adversity is normal. We have been sold a story that life is supposed to be a linear ascent. We are told that if we work hard and follow the rules, we will be exempt from tragedy. This is a comforting myth, but it is a fragile one. When the first arrow strikes, it shatters this myth. The pain you feel when you lose something is not a punishment. It is simply the friction of being alive in a transient world. The Buddha asked us to look at this friction without flinching. He asked us to acknowledge the pain without judging it. It is heavy. It is sharp. It is here. This is the radical honesty required to build true inner strength. You cannot navigate a storm if you pretend the wind is not blowing. You cannot heal a wound if you pretend you are not bleeding. The first step in dealing with any adversity is to acknowledge the arrival of the first arrow. It has struck. It hurts. And that is okay. It is part of the shared human contract. By accepting the first arrow, we stop wasting our energy on denial. We stop fighting the history of what has just happened. We ground ourselves in the present moment. However difficult it may be, this is the soil from which wisdom grows. We must understand that safety is not the absence of danger. Safety is the ability to remain present when danger arrives. If the first arrow is the event itself, what happens next is where the true battle lies. The branch has struck your shoulder, and the pain is throbbing. But almost instantly, a second process begins. Your mind starts to spin a narrative. You start to ask questions that have no answers. Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? This always happens to me. I am so unlucky. I am weak. This is unfair. This mental commentary is what the Buddha called the second arrow. The first arrow was physical or situational. The second arrow is psychological and emotional. And here is the critical distinction. The first arrow was thrown by the world. The second arrow is thrown by you. We shoot ourselves with this second arrow every single time we add shame, blame, or fear to our experience. The pain of the branch is manageable. It is a sensation that rises and falls. But the story that we are a victim, or that the world is out to get us, creates a suffering that can last for years. Adversity becomes trauma when we solidify it into an identity. We stop being a person who is going through a hard time. We become a person who is broken. The Buddha taught that the majority of our human suffering is found in this second arrow. It is the gap between what is happening and what we think should be happening. Consider a sleepless night. The first arrow is simply the body not sleeping. It is fatigue. It is a biological state. The second arrow is the anxiety about not sleeping. It is the calculation of how tired you will be tomorrow. It is the frustration with the ticking clock. It is the fear that you will fail at your job because you are exhausted. This mental proliferation turns a simple lack of sleep into a nightmare of anxiety. This is how we amplify our own pain. We take a finite event and make it infinite in our minds. We project the adversity into the future. We imagine the worst possible outcomes. We catastrophize. We take a single moment of failure and turn it into a verdict on our entire life. The Buddha encouraged us to analyze this mechanism with clinical precision. He wanted us to see the machinery of the ego. The ego loves the second arrow. The ego loves to be the victim or the hero of a tragedy. It feeds on the drama of suffering. But this drama is exhausting. It drains the resilience we need to actually solve the problem. If you lose your job, the first arrow is the loss of income and routine. That is a real challenge that requires action. But if you spend weeks telling yourself that you are worthless, you paralyze your ability to find new work. You are bleeding from a self-inflicted wound. The analysis of our suffering requires us to slow down the frame rate of our experience. We must catch the mind in the act of reaching for the bow. We must notice the moment when simple pain transforms into complex misery. This is not about suppressing our emotions. It is not about pretending we are robots. It is about discernment. It is about asking yourself what is real and what is added. Is this thought helpful? Is this narrative true? Or is it just the echo of my own fear? When we stop throwing the second arrow, the pain of the first arrow remains, but it changes. It becomes cleaner. It becomes bearable. Without the layer of mental resistance, adversity becomes just another sensation to be experienced. It loses its power to destroy us. We realize that we are not the story. We are the witness of the story. This shift in perspective is the beginning of freedom. It creates a space between the stimulus and the response. In that space, we find the capacity to choose. We can choose to react with old patterns of anger and despair, or we can choose to respond with clarity and presence. The chaotic world will always throw the first arrow. That is its nature. But we have the power to put down the bow. We have the power to refuse the second arrow. This is the birth of true power. It is not power over the world. It is power over the mind. And when you have power over the mind, the world can no longer break you. We have learned to stop shooting the second arrow. We have learned to observe the pain without becoming the pain. Now we must pivot to a more radical understanding. The conventional view of adversity is that it is an obstacle to our happiness. We believe that if we could just clear the path of rocks, we could finally run free. But the Buddha offered a counterpoint that challenges the very foundation of this belief. He taught that the rock is not blocking the path. The rock is the path. This is difficult for the modern mind to accept. We are conditioned to seek comfort and efficiency above all else. We want the quickest route from point A to point B, but a life without friction is a life without growth. Consider the lotus flower, one of the most enduring symbols in Buddhist philosophy. It does not grow in pristine, manicured gardens. It does not bloom on the tops of clean, marble mountains. The lotus takes root in the mud. It grows in the murky, stagnant water of the swamp. It requires the decomposition and the filth to fuel its blossoming. Without the mud, there is no lotus. Without the adversity, there is no awakening. The Buddha suggests that we should not merely tolerate our difficulties. We should use them as the raw material for our transformation. Every challenge you face is a teacher that has walked through your door. When you encounter a difficult person, they are teaching you patience. When you encounter a great loss, it is teaching you non-attachment. When you encounter illness, it is teaching you the fragility and preciousness of the moment. If we push these teachers away, we remain ignorant. We remain children who only want to eat sweets and refuse the vegetables that build our bones. There is a profound alchemy available to us in the midst of suffering. It is the transformation of poison into medicine. When we stop running from our pain, we discover something surprising. We discover that our suffering connects us to every other living being. When you are in the grip of deep grief, you are no longer isolated in your ego. You have entered the shared heart of humanity. You look at a stranger on the subway, and you know that they too have lost something. They too have feared the dark. They too have struggled to keep going. This realization shatters the illusion of separation. It births true compassion. Adversity softens the hard shell of the self. It forces us to be vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, we find our real strength. A wall that is rigid will crack under pressure, but water, which yields and flows, can carve through stone over centuries. The counterpoint to fighting adversity is to embrace it as a necessary season. Winter is not the enemy of summer. It is the preparation for it. The cold creates the dormancy required for the next bloom. When we adopt this view, we stop feeling like victims of a cruel universe. We start acting like students of a wise universe. We stop asking why this is happening to me. We start asking what this is trying to show me. This shift in attitude changes the texture of our days. The traffic jam is no longer a thief of time, but a moment to practice stillness. The criticism from a boss is no longer an insult, but a chance to examine our ego. The financial struggle is no longer a source of shame, but a lesson in what we truly need to survive. We begin to metabolize our struggles. We digest them and turn them into wisdom. This is the development of a resilient spirit. Resilience is not about bouncing back to who you were before. It is about expanding into someone new, someone larger, someone who can hold both the joy and the sorrow without breaking. The mud is deep, yes, but that is exactly why the flower is so beautiful. We must learn to trust the mud. We arrive now at the deepest layer of the teaching. We have acknowledged the first arrow. We have put down the second arrow. We have learned to use the mud to grow the lotus. But what is the ultimate state we are aiming for? The Buddha spoke of a quality of mind called upekkha. In English, we translate this as equanimity, but equanimity is often misunderstood as indifference. We think it means not caring. We think it means being cold or distant. This is a mistake. True equanimity is the ability to stand in the middle of a burning house and remain cool. It is a state of immense stability. Imagine the ocean during a violent storm. On the surface, there is chaos. Waves are crashing, the wind is howling, and the water is churning in white foam. This is the level of our daily lives. This is the level of emotions, circumstances, and events. But if you drop down 20 feet below the surface, the water is calmer. If you drop down 500 feet, there is total silence. The storm cannot touch the deep water. The realization the Buddha points us toward is that we are not the waves. We are the ocean. Most of us live our entire lives trapped on the surface. We are tossed around by every wind that blows. A compliment lifts us up, and an insult throws us down. A gain makes us happy, and a loss makes us miserable. We are slaves to the external world. We have handed the remote control of our happiness to everyone else. The Buddha invites us to sink deeper. He invites us to find the place within us that does not change when the weather changes. This place exists in everyone. It is the space of pure awareness. When you are aware of your anger, the awareness itself is not angry. When you are aware of your fear, the awareness itself is not afraid. It is just watching. It is the vast, open sky that allows the clouds to pass. The clouds can be dark and heavy with thunder, but the sky is never damaged by the storm. The sky does not try to hold on to the white clouds or push away the dark ones. It simply holds space for it all. The realization of this inner spaciousness is the antidote to a chaotic world. We realize that our peace does not depend on the world being peaceful. This is the most liberating truth of all. If you wait for the world to be perfect before you can be at peace, you will wait forever. The world will always be a mix of pleasure and pain. There will always be wars and arguments and broken machinery. There will always be sickness and old age. To base your stability on the external world is to build a house on quicksand, but to build your stability on your inner awareness is to build on bedrock. This does not mean we withdraw from life. It does not mean we stop fighting for justice or working to improve our conditions. In fact, we become more effective. A surgeon with shaking hands cannot operate well. A firefighter who is panicking cannot save lives. When we operate from a place of inner calm, our actions are precise. Our words are measured. We bring order to the chaos around us because we have order within us. We become a sanctuary for others. When people are losing their minds with worry, they look to the one who is grounded. They lean on the one who has found the deep water. This is the gift of the Buddha's realization. It is the discovery that you carry a portable paradise within you. No one can take it from you. No bank can foreclose on it. No thief can steal it. It is your birthright. It has been there all along, waiting for you to stop thrashing on the surface, waiting for you to dive. The chaos is not going away, but the chaos does not have to be you. You are the silence behind the noise. You are the witness behind the eyes. You are the unshakable foundation. So as you step back into the noise of your life, remember the arrows. Feel the first one, for it makes you human. Refuse the second one, for it keeps you free. Look at the mud at your feet and see the garden that is waiting to grow. You do not need to retreat to a cave in the mountains to find peace. The monastery is not a place you go to. It is a place you carry with you. It is in the traffic jam. It is in the difficult conversation. It is in the quiet moments of the night when uncertainty creeps in. Stand still. Breathe into the center of your chest. Remember that you are the ocean, not the wave. Let the world spin as it will. You are the axis that remains steady. Walk gently. Walk bravely. You are ready. We spend our entire lives running toward a finish line that keeps moving. We convince ourselves that happiness is just one achievement away. We tell ourselves that once we get the promotion or buy the house or find the perfect partner, then we will finally rest. But the moment we arrive at that destination, the feeling of satisfaction dissolves like mist. The hunger returns almost immediately. This is the great paradox of the modern American experience. We have more comfort and more entertainment and more safety than any generation in history. Yet we are plagued by a deep and quiet anxiety that never seems to leave the pit of our stomach. We are the most entertained people on earth, but we are not the most peaceful. This is not a failure of your character. It is a misunderstanding of reality. 2,500 years ago, a man woke up to this specific trap. He looked at the nature of desire and realized we are trying to fill a bucket that has no bottom. To find true strength, we must first look directly at the illusion we have been sold. There is a fundamental difference between the rush of pleasure and the state of happiness. Most of us spend our days confusing the two. We treat pleasure as if it were a permanent cure for our unease. Imagine a man who is incredibly thirsty. He drinks a glass of salt water. For a brief second, the sensation of liquid on his tongue feels like relief. It feels like the solution to his problem. But because it is salt water, his thirst does not go away. It actually increases. The salt dehydrates him further, making him crave another glass even more intensely than the first. This is exactly how the Buddha described the pursuit of sensory pleasure. He did not say that pleasure was evil or sinful. He simply observed that it is not a solution. It is a temporary disturbance in the nervous system that we mistake for peace. In our modern world, this salt water comes in many forms. It is the dopamine hit of a notification on your smartphone. It is the sudden thrill of buying something new online and waiting for the package to arrive. It is the distraction of binge watching a series to numb the stress of the workday. These things feel good in the moment. They provide a spike of excitement. But notice what happens 10 minutes after the episode ends or the package is opened. The excitement flatlines. You are left exactly where you started, but now you feel a subtle emptiness. You need another hit just to feel normal again. The Buddha called this the cycle of samsara, or wandering. It is an endless wandering through experiences, searching for a home that cannot be built on shifting ground. We mistakenly believe that if we can just string enough pleasurable moments together, we will have a happy life. We think happiness is a math equation where we add up the good times and subtract the bad times. But pleasure is dependent on external conditions. It relies on things going your way. It relies on the world behaving exactly how you want it to behave. This makes you weak. It makes your internal state fragile because you are constantly at the mercy of things you cannot control. If your peace depends on the stock market, or the opinion of your boss, or the attention of a lover, then you are effectively a slave to those things. You have handed over the keys to your well-being to the chaotic forces of the world. True power comes when you stop needing the world to be perfect in order for you to be whole. The Buddha saw that the pursuit of temporary pleasure is actually a form of agitation. It keeps the mind vibrating with want. It keeps the eyes darting around the room, looking for the next fix. A mind that is always hunting for the next good feeling is a mind that can never be still. And without stillness, there is no wisdom. There is only reaction. We become like puppets pulled by the strings of our own cravings. To break the strings, we must understand the machinery of the trap. We must look at the bait and see the hook hidden inside. When we analyze why pleasure fails us, we encounter the law of impermanence. This is the bedrock of Buddhist philosophy, and it is the single most important concept for navigating a chaotic life. The Buddha observed that every single created thing in the universe is in a state of flux. Nothing stands still, not the cells in your body, not the thoughts in your mind, not the mountains, and certainly not the feelings of excitement you get from a win. Everything that arises must also pass away. This is not a pessimistic view. It is simply the physics of reality. The reason we suffer is not because things change. We suffer because we demand that they stay the same. We cling to a moment of joy and try to freeze it in amber. We hold on to our youth, or our status, or our relationships with a desperate grip. Imagine you are holding a handful of water. The harder you squeeze your hand to keep the water, the faster it slips through your fingers. This grasping creates a background radiation of anxiety in our lives. Even when we are enjoying a beautiful moment, there is a shadow of fear because we know it will end. We are on vacation, but we are already worrying about the flight home. We are in a new relationship, but we are terrified of the first argument. This underlying anxiety poisons the very pleasure we are trying to enjoy. Because we build our happiness on things that are unstable, we feel unstable. We build our houses on sand, and then wonder why we feel unsafe when the tide comes in. The Buddha taught that relying on impermanent things for permanent happiness is a logical error. It is like trying to use a cloud as a chair. It is not designed to hold your weight. When you fall through, it is not the fault of the cloud. It is the fault of your expectation. This analysis requires us to be brutally honest with ourselves. We have to look at the things we are chasing and ask if they can actually deliver what they promise. Can a new car give you permanent self-esteem? Can a promotion give you lasting peace of mind? Can a number in a bank account remove the fear of death? If we look closely, the answer is clearly no. These things can provide comfort and convenience. They can make life easier, but they cannot make life meaningful. They cannot heal the fracture in the human heart. When we realize that the external world cannot save us, we stop looking to it for salvation. This might sound depressing at first, but it is actually the beginning of total freedom. If the world cannot save you, then the world cannot destroy you. You stop needing approval. You stop needing constant stimulation. You begin to withdraw your investment from the stock market of temporary emotions. You stop riding the roller coaster of high highs and low lows. You step off the ride and stand on solid ground. This is the shift from seeking pleasure to seeking peace. It is the movement from a child seeking candy to an adult seeking nourishment. It is the development of a mind that is robust and resilient, a mind that does not shatter when the wind blows. By accepting that everything changes, you flow with the change instead of fighting it. You become like water, soft but unstoppable. This is the analytical foundation of wisdom. It clears the debris so we can finally build something that lasts. When we hear that we should stop chasing pleasure, many of us feel a sudden resistance. We immediately think that the alternative is a life of boredom. We imagine a monk sitting in a cave staring at a blank wall for 40 years. We worry that without the constant pursuit of the next high, our lives will lose their color. This is the great misunderstanding that keeps us trapped on the hamster wheel. The Buddha was not suggesting we become robots who feel nothing. He was offering a trade. He proposed trading the cheap thrill of fleeting excitement for the deep resonance of contentment. There is a profound difference between the noise of a party and the silence of a sunrise. One drains your energy while the other restores it. The counterpoint to the pursuit of pleasure is the cultivation of joy. These sound like synonyms in English, but in the landscape of the mind, they are opposites. Pleasure is about consuming. It is about taking something from the outside world and devouring it to make yourself feel better. Joy is about appreciating. It is an internal state that radiates outward regardless of what is happening around you. Think of the difference between buying a bouquet of flowers and walking through a garden. When you buy the flowers, you own them. You take them home and for a few days they are yours. But eventually they wilt and die and you have to throw them away. When you walk through a garden, you do not own anything. You simply witness the beauty. Because you do not try to possess the flowers, you do not fear their loss. You can enjoy the experience fully without the anxiety of ownership. This is the kind of happiness the Buddha pointed toward. It is a happiness that does not need a reason to exist. Most of us wait for permission to be happy. We tell ourselves we are allowed to be happy only when it is the weekend or when we are on vacation. We hold our happiness hostage until our demands are met. But true power is the ability to access a sense of well-being right here in the middle of the mess. It is the ability to find a moment of pause while sitting in traffic. It is the capacity to feel the warmth of a coffee cup in your hands and realize it is enough. This approach shifts the focus from quantity to quality. Instead of needing more and more experiences to feel alive, we learn to go deeper into the experiences we already have. We stop skimming the surface of our lives. When we stop frantically running toward the future, we finally arrive in the present. And it turns out, the present is where all the real life is actually happening. The Buddha taught that the cessation of craving leads to a state of cool, refreshing peace. Imagine walking out of a sweltering desert into an air-conditioned room. The relief you feel is not because you added something new, it is because you removed the heat. True happiness is the absence of the fever of want. It is the relief of putting down a heavy backpack you have been carrying for decades. You do not realize how heavy the burden of constant desire is until you finally set it down. When you stop needing the world to entertain you, the world becomes a fascinating place. You stop judging every moment as good or bad. You simply experience it as it is. This is the birth of true freedom. You are no longer a beggar asking the world for scraps of dopamine. You become a king or a queen reigning over your own internal kingdom. You realize that the source of your dissatisfaction was never the world outside. It was always the hunger inside. And hunger is something that can be healed. This healing process leads us to the ultimate realization. We realize that we have the power to curate our own reaction to reality. The Buddha told a famous parable about the two arrows. He said that being human means we will inevitably be struck by the first arrow. This first arrow represents the unavoidable pains of life. It is physical pain, or the loss of a job, or an insult from a stranger, or the grief of losing a loved one. No amount of wisdom or wealth can protect you from the first arrow. It is simply part of the deal of being alive. But then he said that most of us immediately strike ourselves with a second arrow. The second arrow is our reaction to the pain. It is the mental narrative we spin around the event. We say, "Why is this happening to me?" We say this is unfair and it will never end. We obsess and we ruminate and we blame. The Buddha taught that the first arrow hurts, but the second arrow is where the suffering lives. And the second arrow is optional. The realization of true inner strength is understanding that you can choose not to fire the second arrow. You can feel the pain of a difficult situation without adding the layer of mental torture on top of it. This is the essence of Stoic resilience found in Buddhist practice. It is the development of a gap between the stimulus and your response. In that gap lies your freedom. When someone cuts you off on the highway, you feel the flash of anger. That is the first arrow. But instead of rolling down the window and screaming and ruining your entire morning, you notice the anger. You watch it rise like a wave. And because you do not feed it with a story about how disrespected you are, the wave crests and falls away. You remain the ocean beneath the wave. This practice turns the mind into a fortress. It creates a citadel that cannot be breached by the chaos of the outside world. You become less reactive and more responsive. People around you will notice this shift. They will see that you are the calmest person in the room when a crisis hits. They will sense a stability in you that feels like gravity. This is not because you are indifferent or cold. It is because you have anchored yourself in something deeper than the temporary circumstances. You have realized that you are the awareness that watches the storm, not the storm itself. The clouds of emotion drift by, but the sky remains untouched by the rain. This realization changes your relationship with yourself. You stop beating yourself up for having negative thoughts. You see your mind as a machine that generates thoughts just like your heart pumps blood. You do not have to believe every thought that passes through your head. You can stand back and observe them with a sense of humor and compassion. You stop being the victim of your own mind. You become the master of your attention. This is the hardest work you will ever do. It is much easier to blame the world than to tame your own mind. But the reward is a dignity that cannot be taken away from you. It is a happiness that is bulletproof because it does not depend on everything going right. It is the ability to stand in the middle of a burning house and remain cool. This is the promise of the path. It is not an escape from reality. It is a total immersion in reality without the armor of fear. It is the discovery that when you stop fighting the universe, you can finally float. We spend our days waiting for the big moment that will change everything. We wait for the lottery win, or the retirement, or the grand epiphany. But the Buddha taught that the shift happens in the microscopic moments. It happens right now in the way you breathe while you are listening to this. It happens in the choice to let go of a small annoyance instead of clinging to it. True happiness is not a destination you arrive at after a long journey. It is a manner of traveling. It is the decision to walk through the fire of life without letting it burn your spirit. You have everything you need right now to make this shift. You do not need a monastery or a retreat center. You just need the courage to look at your desires and see them for what they are. You need the bravery to stop running. When you stop running, you can finally look around and see the richness that was always there. The finish line we have been chasing was an illusion. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to get. There is only the clarity of this moment and the peace of a mind that has finally come home. Stand still. Breathe deep. The search is over.